now I have disciplined nutrition habits, but I can't seem to find the time to work out. What do you suggest at that point?
Montgomery County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Welcome to another episode of Voices of Service. Today we are joined by Officer Marshall Weider, who is forging forward with a focus on fitness and an overall healthy lifestyle. Through practical tips and actionable advice, Officer Weider will guide us from physical activity and proper nutrition to ways to manage stress and prioritize self-care.
So, Marshall, thank you for being here. We've got to work together on a couple things. You're at the academy. You're doing some great stuff with fitness, but now I get it. I keep looking at myself in the camera over here, right? And we were having a conversation before this started. In 2005, you were
graduating high school.
In high school, all right. In 2005, I was a homicide detective. So the reason I don't look like you all is because I'm just a little bit older. But the physical fitness stuff you're doing is incredible at the academy. And like Cassandra said, you're kind of forging forward with this because it's one of these areas of wellness that we're just now getting into for officers, like really focusing on. So Cassandra and I was talking. She said we were going to do this, and I'm excited for her to forge ahead and ask you a bunch of questions.
Thanks, Rick.
Well, we're super happy that you're here. I really just, from the get-go, kind of explain to me how fitness became so important to you.
Really from the beginning, it's kind of been a lifestyle for me, you know, from sports early on, and then really my uncle getting me into the gym before high school. That kind of started the downward slope of everything.
Well, you were a wrestler.
Yes.
Yeah, so wrestler is very intense, right? One-on-one competition, and you gotta be cutting weight and doing all kinds of crazy things. Hopefully you cut weight the right way.
I was going to say, just in case I have a little one watching this, you don't always have to cut weight, right?
Yeah.
We can be disciplined with our nutrition and our exercise.
Okay. Well, that's why we have young people on talking about this now, not old people like me.
But it's a very disciplined sport. And so that nutrition, that mental health, the strength, you know, it kind of all, I guess, played into what you're doing now.
Yes.
Correct? And
Absolutely.
Explain to then, what are we doing now at the academy? What are we doing for our officers?
So for officers right now, we actually just had a recent shift training. So the community engagement division reached out and were like, hey, we want some tips on nutrition and we'd like to have a workout. So kind of customized a block of classroom for them. It was pretty short. We hit on societal challenges that we have that everyone faces, as well as specific issues that law enforcement face. What are some of the things we can do about it? Covered some basic nutrition, and then we went into the gym. We did an in-body and bioimpedance, so kind of just giving everyone like a metric of where they stand, you know, with the weight, body fat percentage, skeletal muscle mass. We did a biomechanics block, so really focusing more on common injuries of law enforcement, how we prevent some of those things, and really general population. It's like we're just kind of, with the vests and everything else, kind of pulls us into some of those things even more.
And that's something that their shift, that CD, reached out to you to ask it. I mean, it was something that they felt was very important. This is not something that I guess is incorporated in our normal training, but that group specifically asked for you to do.
Yeah, so we're trying to push forward with that so they have that option as well, in addition to having different workshops and stuff like that in, just so officers have the ability to, you know, get that training and the resources they need.
Now, I've seen your training, and I've heard you say some very interesting things, much more complicated words. I'll use the simple words like sugar and stress. And I wish, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I got to tell you, people make fun of cops all the time, right? Because you guys like donuts, right? You guys eat donuts. I love myself a donut. But there's actually a reason, and it's our profession.
Yes.
To some degree. My lack of discipline, but our profession.
So there's a lot of research. So high stress, and this profession is very good at, you know, providing that for us, increases cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And there's a lot of research that shows when that hormone is high, that, you know, we crave those sugary foods, we crave those high fat foods, and it makes it really hard to stay on track with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and you combine those two, and you have great discipline. You combine the knowledge and then some tips from you, like you did with that shift training. that can go a long way for our officers.
That's the goal, is to really make sure they have the resources and then, be a resource for them if they need it.
Now I have disciplined nutrition habits, but I can't seem to find the time to work out. What do you suggest at that point?
I always say start small. Everyone wants to just hop in the gym or wherever it is, but just small changes, because it's typically when you try to make that real big change, typically New Year, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. It's very hard then to make that extreme jump, and then that's when kind of things fall to the wayside for a few more months or however long it is. So even just a 15-minute walk per day has been shown to really start conditioning that metabolism. So I think, whether that's, perfect time to work in some mindfulness, whatever podcast, whatever it is, just listen, just walk for 15 minutes continuously every day. And that's kind of the start that I have for a lot of people, depending on where they are, and then kind of just gradually build up from there.
So what you're saying is listen to this podcast and go walk.
And go for a walk.
And go for a walk. Yeah. I like it. You're promoting. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of those, when we spoke previously, you spoke about some of those obstacles that maybe officers or even our community may find, the difficult schedule, the demands that you may have at home or at the job that you can't get out. And just by having that time to get out, do those small steps. Are there any specific exercises that you recommend over others, right? Like walking, I know that when we spoke, you said, just get out of nature. Just get outside, do something. But is there something specific?
It really comes down to the individual's goals, but I would always say if you're trying to get into it, do something that you like. So if people like to run, or some people like to lift, or whatever it is, just whatever that passion is or whatever you gravitate more, just stick with that initially. Because that's going to be that thing that's, hey, this is fun, starting to build some of that confidence, and then you want to come back. But if you're doing something you dread every time, you're going to avoid it altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said you like to run.
I do.
What'd you say? You get to mile 3?
Mile 3, and it's amazing. But up until that point, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible.
The whole thing sounds horrible.
After 3, it's great.
Really?
Try it.
Running? Yeah. Well, I have my own gym in my garage because of the COVID thing, right? So I got my little stuff. But I'm a Peloton fan, so I do something. I do the boot camps because I don't think I could do 3 miles. My mind just wanders, and I get bored. But see, you found your thing.
I think I come up with some of the greatest ideas after about mile 3.
Okay. That's where. Okay, well, keep it up.
Did you say that's weird?
No, I think that's great.
Well,
I think that's great, but it goes to what Marshall was saying: is you find something that you enjoy and you go to it, and actually I think that's a great tip for one of the things that we wanted to talk about with you. Like, so yeah, we're a police podcast. We're talking about how you can help officers, but this really applies to everyone.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone's going through stress in their life. It doesn't matter the profession, and it's different types of stress. Stress affects people differently, and it wears you down, right?
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah. So with what you're teaching our officers, but we can take away some things just as our professional staff or just our citizens that are listening.
Absolutely. It plays on the body, and you kind of adapt to that level of it. So what might be super stressful for someone might not be for the other person, but regardless, you're still feeling that stress. So typically the things that are the easiest to do in terms of getting home, I'm gonna watch some Netflix, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna get on my phone. They're the things that really are just gonna drive that up even more. So it's kind of just taking that step to do it. So if you recommend if you significant other, family member, coworker, whatever, just maybe kind of make that pact. I'm going to start now and have that boost.
You can get the challenges on your watch. I know my son actually just challenged me yesterday to I don't know, it was like a movement challenge. So you're just out there doing anything, and you're challenging the people. But to get back to when we talked about mile 3, I feel very mentally clear. There is a huge tie between physical fitness and your mental, I want to say health. And can you kind of help us understand why there is such a good tie there?
So you can't have one without the other. And, like I tell recruits or anyone I've ever worked with, you're only going to be, as physically strong as you are mentally strong. It's kind of, the mind controls everything in that nervous system. So when you work out, good hormones are released, kind of makes you feel good. So you need that driving force. If you only focus, say for instance, on that mental part, you're going to have a lot of health issues. So it's a back and forth battle.
So one of the things that I know you and the Academy staff did, you advocated for a program that we put on here for a few officers, O2X, and great reviews on it, right? And it kind of links those two things up. What's that program?
So that program, they break theirs into Eat, Sweat, and Thrive. So the two that you're talking about, Chief, they have the sweat, which is your physical training, it's your injury prevention, everything like that, and your thrive. So not just talking about just mental health, but then getting to that point where you're thriving and that mental performance aspect of it. So they bring specialists that are, with different special units in the military that are current practitioners within our profession, and they'll bring them in to teach just on those topics.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because I was just on a tour at Walter Reed, and the military, terrible things unfortunately come out of combat, but also good things. And the military is really focused on wellness and mindfulness and bringing those things together so that our soldiers can lead better lives. But it's making its way into the rest of the world. Right? So it's great that we could bring that to the officers, and I'm hopeful we can do more things like that in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah, so our last one was in the fall of 2023, and forging forward and hopefully get them back soon. In the meantime, maybe I'll put another workshop together. I had done that kind of in the law of the two, and we had 3 great local businesses come out that kind of hit all those topics for us there. So,
and it's great having that support, but you also do other stuff, because it's not just that. I know you were going to ask about, because I'm in charge of recruiting, right? You guys do a fantastic program, or pre-hire program.
Yep, that's what I was going to ask about. Absolutely.
Right.
So actually start our 10th class tonight. So I'll be heading back to the academy to run that. But yeah, that program, we kind of work on 4 pillars. So, we talk about leadership. We'll go into kind of that mental piece, physical training, and then your nutrition. So kind of tying all those together. And the program is really designed to give them all the skills they need to succeed in the academy and well beyond, but not give them any, pull back the curtain and show them what's going to happen in the academy. So whatever they face, they'll have the.
And really, I make fun of the age difference a little bit. I'm not that much older than you all. But generationally, it doesn't matter. I mean, for each generation, Xer, baby boomer, Gen Zer, millennial, these are all basic concepts across the board, and it really just takes a little bit of discipline to commit. And you can tell us what we need to do.
I try to. So in terms of that, it's just those small steps and really just that accountability. For me, that's kind of something I always look inward on and kind of self-reflect. So, that's when I think the mental piece and that mindfulness really come into play, because you have that time for that self-reflection of like, what do I actually need to do? And then kind of getting to that point where, all right, I'm going to make this decision. Because as much as we try to push forward or whatever, I always say motivation is kind of like your coffee, your caffeine. Yeah. It's going to wear off at some point, and then you're left with discipline. So you really have to forge forward on your own, and we can't provide that to you, but we can kind of, hopefully help you make that realization quicker.
Absolutely. I think the last thing I'd really like to touch on is the aspect of injury prevention, because that's for officers, but that's also for our community. And kind of walk me through, I guess, how you see that in your programs that you're running.
Yeah, so I personally believe right now, it's not really, healthcare is more reactive, they're not proactive. And in terms of the injuries, you're going when you're injured versus that prehab, which you're trying to prevent it. So really trying to dive in and see some of the mechanics that the recruits have, or anyone does, kind of show them some things that can lead to injuries down the line, and especially in this profession, whether it's sitting, prolonged walking, or some of the other things that we might have to do, really setting them up for success that way and trying to prevent some of those with different exercises. And
back injuries. Yes. Classic police injury, but also classic everyone injury. What do I do?
So that's a multifaceted thing. We always talk about everything could might feel pain in one place and it might be coming from somewhere else, and vice versa. So a lot of the things that we do is we work on more of our internal core strength. So if I were to say, what do you think of when I say abs? The first thing.
Sit-ups.
Sit-ups, I think of six-pack. So that's that muscle that's responsible for kind of like bending, that flexion. You actually have a more internal muscle. It's called your transverse abdominis. So it's kind of like your internal weight belt. So everyone kind of has that. So teaching how to contract that, it kind of stabilizes that spine, kind of gives you that support. And also working on a lot of mobility throughout the hips and other areas that kind of tighten up and start to pull that back in ways it shouldn't go.
So you're teaching our officers that. See, that's outstanding, because when I came on, we didn't talk about that at all. We just said, here, wear this belt. How much weight? Have you ever weighed the belt? I'd have to imagine someone, it's got to be like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Probably at least 20 pounds.
With all the stuff now.
Yeah,
With all the stuff now.
The belt with the vest,
Yeah.
everything. It's
Yeah, and all that's going on the back. But we have, again, we have listeners that don't wear this belt, but they do the same thing, right? They're sitting all the time, so we got to work.
Carry kids or
Right.
like diaper bags, all the other stuff
Yeah.
I'm familiar with right now. So
There you go. All of it. But all right, so I'm going to, what was that muscle again?
transverse abdominis.
All right, I'll spell that later. All right.
well, awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here with us. Do you have any further questions for him?
Well, I'm going to have
for a
him.
lot.
Well, after we're done, I'm going to have him show me the proper form for a burpee, and then because that's one of the best ones you can do, right?
It's all body, total body on that. So.
Burpees are great, but they're very painful. But yeah, we'll do this all off camera later. Don't worry.
All right.
But thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for staying tuned. Until next time, stay safe.